This is the Healthology Experts, where we talk about the art and science of health and longevity. I'm Dr. Traveler, and thank you for joining us. All right, you guys, welcome back. It's Dr. Traveler again here with Healthology Experts, and today I'm very excited it's someone that I just recently met, and so during this talk, I'm going to get to know her a little bit too. Met her just the other day, but this is Lisa McLauchlin. Yep. Okay. And she's got some really cool stuff to talk about that I love. Breath work and other stuff, but that's kind of what we're going to be hitting on today. But first, before we do that, all I did was say your name. Then I know this is a big ask.
Yeah.
But why don't you give us a little intro, maybe to you, brief of where you're from, maybe a brief just bio a little bit. Tell us about you.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So we moved down to St. George about 2 years ago. We lived up north in Salt Lake area, and I just opened a private practice when I came down here. I'm a trauma therapist, so I specialize in doing trauma, so EMDR, ART, just different somatic things for trauma. And because I love the somatic and how doing that instead of talk therapy moved the trauma in new ways, that kind of opened me to other somatic things like yoga, and then breath work has been kind of a new one this year. I mean, I've always done some breath work, but really deep diving into it this year is when I dove into that. So.
That's awesome. So are you originally from Salt Lake area? That's where you're from?
Yeah, I grew up in Sandy, Utah.
Awesome. Yeah. And then family. I know you've got kids.
Yes.
Wasn't it your daughter that played?
Yes, my daughter played. My kids play the piano.
So just admittedly, we're in Utah. We're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. One of my callings is, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, I'm on the high count. I go and speak. Don't be too impressed. Anyway, we're not the greatest speakers. In fact, most high council are known for not being great. But we go around and speak, and I spoke, and she came up after. But so that's where we kind of met.
Right.
But her daughter played the piano and did amazing.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah.
My kids, so I'm actually a musician myself too. So I did vocal
Nice.
performance for my undergrad, and my kids are pianists so far. My daughter loves singing too.
Awesome. So how many kids?
4 kids. So I have
4 kids.
three girls and a boy, and then I'm married to Todd McLauchlin.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's Lisa. Amazing. Like I say, just getting to know her. But yeah. Okay, so you said, so how did you get into therapy? Have you been doing it for a long time?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2009. I've always been fascinated by just the humans and growth and transformation. And so I just kind of lots of experiences led me to this. I feel like my whole path, even as a therapist, has just been an unfolding. Like one thing I'll start, that'll lead to the next, that'll lead to the next. So it's kind of been this unfolding, but I graduated in 2009. So I did voice, and it took a couple of years, and then I went back to grad school, and then did it ever since.
I know with therapy you can kind of like special, and you said all the letters. So explain a little.
For sure.
If the common person just says, well, Lisa, what do you specialize? Like, what do you say
for sure.
to the lay public? What do you
sure.
say you help people with the most?
So I work primarily with adults. I do a couple of teens, but mostly adults. And so when I say trauma, and then however trauma manifests, so depression, anxiety, and PTSD symptoms. So things like EMDR and ART. The ART is a break off of EMDR. So EMDR is probably the most common one, and it is an eye movement therapy, or they use bilateral. I have like little tappers that you use. And that bilateral movement helps to stimulate the part of the brain, kind of like REM sleep. And that just helps access trauma, heal, bring those parts back online. Like I tell people, when you have trauma, it's almost like a part of your brain kind of goes offline.
Yeah.
And then whenever you're triggered, it activates. That's why you're like, why did I act in such a crazy way from how I wanted to act in? So we help bring those parts back online. They're integrated, and you can show up for your life how you want to show up.
That's awesome. And you've been doing it for how long? You said 2009?
Yeah, so 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Does it feel like it's been that long?
No, I love it. Like it feels like I've been doing it forever, but
cool.
It feels like a long time.
That's awesome. Any specific, now again, it's getting personal. I don't even know what this, but what brought you down to Southern Utah then? Just said
we just felt pulled down here, and we kind of came, and I opened up a practice, and it worked out for my husband's job, and
Cool.
We just took an adventure and we came here.
Liking it then?
Yeah, we're those people that came down, so hopefully people will accept us.
Well, I ran away from Cache Valley, so I'm originally from Cache Valley too.
Getting out of the snow has been nice.
Yes,
for sure.
I escaped. I know some people think it's too hot, and I'm like, I always say my only complaint is that it still gets too cold.
Yeah, it does a little bit, for sure.
Well, that's awesome. Well, what kind of sparked our meeting and conversation? So, in our church, I was talking about the connect. Me being doing what I do, which most of the people who watch this know. I'm a chiropractor and acupuncture. I kind of was talking about the relationship. This podcast we talk about physical, mental, spiritual, and I was talking about how the things that I've learned physically have helped me spiritually, and I talked about breathing and that how it's really helped me come closer to God, and then you came up and talked about this breath work, and I'm really interested. It's interesting. How once you start talking about something and it just starts popping into your life. So there was this and other. Patients have just said stuff about, hey, do you know? I want to do breath work and this stuff. So we may, even those who are watching this, you may be getting some clients. But tell us a little bit about how you got into breath work and how that relates to other stuff too. Don't be confined to that, but tell me what drew you to breath work.
Breath work, yeah. I have to say, when you're giving your talk, I'm like, yes, I love this topic so much. So I loved hearing someone talk about it. So like I said, I've always used some form of breath work with my clients, just because to me, especially with trauma, breath is that bridge that takes you from that activated sympathetic fight or flight nervous system back into that parasympathetic nervous system. I tell my clients this is the one free tool that you have access to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I don't know if you've heard that phrase, change the way you breathe, you change your life. It really is true. When you learn to access the power of breath, it has a tremendous power to change your life. So I started with things like box breathing. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
So that's what the Navy
but
SEALs.
Maybe they don't. Yeah.
So box breathing is what the Navy SEALs use when they go in on missions to regulate their nervous systems. And it's just a simple breath where you breathe in for 4, and then you hold it at the top for 4, and then you breathe out for 4, and then you hold it for 4, and you repeat.
Hence the box, right?
Yeah.
4,
4.
Yeah.
So that's just a basic one I teach all my clients. When they come in, I have a mindfulness exercise, and that's part of it. But then where it really started to expand was actually this past January. I had a friend who invited me to, do you know what holotropic type breath work is?
I don't know that one.
So there's really no true holotropic breath works when you hear people doing breath work, but that was developed in the 70s, and it's just a really activated breath work that helps you kind of get to that altered state subconscious part of your brain. And so lots of people have created types of breath work very similar to that I actually ended up getting certified in. So I had a friend invite me to a class back in January, and I had no idea what I was getting into. I just knew it was an hour of breath work. And it's a kind of an intense one. So you do 2 breaths. You breathe into the belly and the chest, and then you exhale. So you're getting really high levels of oxygen through the process. And I had an incredible experience in it that just kind of blew my mind and opened things up that I wasn't expecting. So they say that type of breathing, what it does is it shuts off that monkey mind, that ego chatter that gets in the way, and it helps shut that off, so then you can access all that good stuff in the subconscious that we don't normally get to access.
Yeah.
So because I loved it so much, then I ended up doing a certification and got certified as a breathwork facilitator. So I actually use that in my practice as well. I just had a really cool experience this week with a client who had just kind of been stuck and not able to access things. And we did a breathwork session, and she was able to finally access those things that she hadn't. And so it's just another tool. Yeah.
So how long is a set? I know I follow you on some social media.
I just started an Instagram.
So there's an Instagram, and you were talking about, from quick 10-minute up to an hour or more. Right. So what does a session kind of look like, just going through?
Yeah, so the one on Instagram I was talking about, so I'm on about day 50 now, but a couple months ago I just was I'm going to do a 40-day breathwork challenge. So I started it for myself, and I just decided I was going to do a deep dive into all sorts of breath work. So I just kind of I'm like, I'm gonna wing this. I had no idea what I was getting into, so I did Wim Hof breathing.
Yes.
I did, of course, this kind of conscious, so instead of holotropic, usually you'll hear it called like conscious connected breath.
Yeah.
Any of these hour-long breath work classes you see are probably that type of breathing. Some like Joe Dispenza breathing, Kundalini breathing. I was like, I'm gonna explore
All of them.
like all of the ones. Like I kind of took a week and explored different ones. So on that challenge, I did anywhere from, that was just showing up every day. And I probably did one of these more conscious connected ones about once a week in this challenge. So, but a breathwork session like that is usually about an hour. So they say do the active breathing for about 27, 30 minutes-ish. And then you do kind of more meditative breathwork. That's where all the good stuff comes. So that's the best part, right? You've done all this work, and then you get all these downloads and connections. So.
Well, that's awesome. So tell me, you just said you had a patient with a good response. Now I'm interested in, and again, selfishly speaking, a lot of my patients, now it's hard to separate physical, mental, spiritual. You can't really affect one without affecting the other. One saying that I share with patients a lot is that what I treat in my office, people think I treat, pain and things and I say I feel like I treat stress. Like, the effects of stress. And that's where I've noticed a lot of the breath work really helps with that, like the physical effects. Have you noticed any of that or talked with patients about clients? About the effects like physically, have they noticed changes with that?
Yeah, so for me, I can share especially, I had both physical, emotional, and spiritual growth from it, right? Yeah. Spiritual, just deepening connection to intuition and insights and, just knowing, like, connection to God. The emotional, I kind of expected these, but I was blown away by how much it affected me. So like the Wim Hof breathing I used on a week where kind of, we have these old stories that hold us back, these negative stories. It was a week where one of those was coming up for me, and the Wim Hof breathing was so powerful and just moving it, like getting that energy, that story moved and out of my system, and then I could connect back to, oh yeah, here's the true story, So it was really powerful for emotional work, and then physically, it totally changed. Like I lost like 10 pounds doing it. That wasn't even the goal that I was trying for, but what happened was I just became a lot more intuitive in my eating. It just created general mindfulness around my body. So my hunger fullness cues were a lot more present and just things like that. So it really did affect all three areas in a really significant way. Yeah,
I just know a lot of, again, patients will come in, oftentimes, lower back or neck, and they'll say, why is my neck always so tight? And it's stress, like it's cortisol levels that are really high. And that's when really what got me into a lot of the breathing stuff was because of that. I was kind of trying to treat a patient and going, they're just always tight and stiff, no matter how much we dig into the muscles. And so that's when I kind of said, there's got to be something more. And then, that's when you learn that, there's these physical responses, and cortisol kind of settles into the neck and shoulders. And so then I saw that one of the best ways, and this is kind of where I got in what I shared in my talk. I thought I was just getting into breathing so that I myself, I was in a stressful situation. It's funny because again, the our church lingo. So I was a bishop at the time, and just loved it, by the way, but stress. Like, and I just, my shoulders were up high, and I was kind of just going, I've got to figure out a way to like get my neck to release. And so all I did, again, looking into the studies, and that's why, like, you're much more in depth as far as, I know a lot of these names, I love Wim Hof stuff, but it sounds like,
I know.
We're gonna have to meet after, because I'm like 30 minutes of Wim Hof. When I do Wim Hof, it takes like just a few minutes. Like I just do a few rounds of.
No, Wim Hof I would do like 10. And on my Instagram, I did a bunch of links to these ones I just kind of found and explored.
So yeah, now I'm interested in doing some of the other stuff. Yeah. But what I noticed was just that, like, stronger than anything, and a lot of these research studies were showing that, again, just doing nothing but just thinking about your breathing, like they weren't even saying, try box breathing or whatever. Literally, the studies just said, just think about in and out, and just thinking about your breathing, taking that's why in my talk I talked about breathing is the only function that's both autonomic and voluntary, where if you forget about it, you'll just do it, but you can control it. So it touches a different part of the brain. And more than anything I've ever done, even more than exercise, more than talking to people, like I noticed that my shoulders and stress levels all of a sudden were like, ooh, just like
for sure.
so dramatic. And all I was doing was like
breathing.
Breathing.
Kind of
like
amazing.
3 minutes.
Sure.
And then I went to more. I say I at least 10 minutes a day. I want to spend just again thinking about my breathing, doing some sort of control. I do a little bit of the Wim Hof or something, a box breathing, but whatever it is, 10 minutes a day. And I've noticed that doing that is just made such a big difference.
Yeah, I know. I had the same thing. I was not expecting it to change my life as much as it did. And I loved it so much that I got to 40. I'm like, let's go to 365. Like, we might as well. I mean, now I just hope it's a pattern, right?
Yeah.
In a habit that I do in my life, because it's been so powerful.
Okay, because you've done obviously a lot more than me. Again, I'm like, just think about your breathing.
I'm
That's my
still
advice.
a newbie too.
Okay.
I'm just exploring.
But
we're gonna keep exploring.
So what would you, and I can give some ideas of kind of how I got started, because here's what happens, and I don't know if you've noticed this. Like when you introduce it to people, are they usually pretty open to it? Or I can share my response, but what have you noticed when you?
The box breathing and things like that, usually my clients are pretty open.
Yeah.
When I teach that to them, I have a mindfulness exercise that I go like a 4-step one, and the 3rd step is kind of stillness and breathing. So they're usually pretty open.
They're pretty open.
And honestly, they've been open to the more activated, that conscious, connected, solely because they're there for therapy. They're there to dive in, and I kind of talk about it as another tool, like this EMDR that they've been doing. It's not EMDR at all, but just another tool.
I feel like your clients would be more open. But
outside of clients, people are like,
they're like, I don't know.
It's Brad.
Well, here's the response that I get a lot is, I've always made the mistake of calling it meditation. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but what I would say is, you need, like, your shoulders are really tight, you should meditate. And really, when I switched it from meditation to breathing, because most people would say, I've tried it.
I can't do it.
Like, I can't quiet my mind, it doesn't work. I've tried it, and every time my mind just wanders off. And so then I switched it to just, think about your breathing. So maybe, I don't know.
And do they respond better?
They respond better, but even then, I just think people just need to try it a little better. So do you want to, and for me, it was the same thing. It's funny the way, and you'll probably be like, don't ever give that to a client. But here's the way that it's funny because I have an Apple Watch, and it's got a breathe app.
Yeah.
And what happened with it was I just said, you can set it for 1 to 5 minutes. And I started with 1 minute.
Yeah, me
but
too.
Instead of just letting it breathe though, it tracks your heart rate. And I'm like a goals person, right? So I talked about that in my talk. I'm dopamine driven sometimes. Yeah. And what I would do is I would say, I want to see how low I can get my heart rate. So I would go 1 minute at a time, and just through breath try and see if I could lower my heart rate. And so that's how I kind of got into it. And then the more I noticed, hey, I'm getting better, just like anything, if you practice it, I was getting better at just focusing on my breath. And then once I got to 5 minutes, that's as high as I could go on my watch. I'm like, I want more. Yeah. And so then I just kind of said, I don't need the watch anymore. Yeah. Cool. But that was kind of how I kind of introduced myself to it, and then just got more into it. How would you suggest maybe doing something like that? But how when a client is like, when you're introducing them, or someone that may have a challenge, say I have a hard time, how would you introduce them to breath work? What's maybe an exercise that they could do that's really helpful?
So I would keep it small and short too, right? Because we have these neural pathways that are developed in almost all of our brains, right? That it's like I call them like the New Year's resolution pathways that when I set a goal and then a few weeks later we're like, we don't really want to do it. We create a neural pathway that's like when we make a promise, we don't really show up for ourselves, right? So it's really important to make it small enough so you can create some new neural pathways that say, hey, we actually show up for ourselves in these meaningful ways. And that pathway in and of itself, if it's 1 minute, is so powerful. So I tell them to keep it small to start, very like 1 to 3 minutes to start. And the box breath is usually the first one.
The easiest.
That I will give. But I have been having, more clients kind of do that Wim Hof or like, the reason why meditation can be really hard is that a lot of times we're doing it maybe in the middle of the day, when you think about it, you've got all these stressors and things in your life, and then you sit down to meditate and your brain's like, wait, I got all these other things I'm thinking about and stressing over right now. So either first thing in the morning makes it a little easier, or like doing something like the Wim Hof where you really can just focus on.
Why don't you describe, when you describe Wim Hof?
The Wim Hof, I just do the YouTube little one that he has.
I do
not
too.
A Wim Hof pro. I'm not.
I'm not a pro either, but I am familiar with it.
But he does you breathe into the belly. It's very similar to the Conscious Connected.
Yeah.
You breathe into the belly and into the chest, and then let it go.
Yeah.
And you just do that, and then you do holds.
The holds. That's what.
And the holds are my favorite. I love holds. I visualize things a lot. So I visualize breathing in all the good stuff I want, like the new energy, light, in the inhale and the exhale, I release it.
Yeah.
And then for me on the holds, this is not a Wim Hof thing at all.
Yeah.
But I just visualize all that new energy flowing through my body. And then by the time I'm done with that, I usually turn on like a meditation song, music. And it's amazing how much easier it is. Because like I said, all that energy is moved, right?
That's interesting. Because I've kind of fallen into that same thing.
It just kind of naturally. Oh, really? Cool. Yeah. But yes, to start though, I would say keep it small. Start with 1 to 3 minutes. Just show up. That's the most important thing.
I love that.
More than any method.
Okay. Yeah, see, and now my mind's going again.
I know.
I've got to get more
to talk
into
about,
it.
For sure.
Well, it's fun because, again, it's one of those things where you can just grow with it and do more and more. And I find the more I do, the more I'm like, this is awesome. Yeah. Like, really, really cool. Powerful. Why don't you tell, so people may be interested, like if you're interested in doing a breath session or a session with you, how would someone get a hold of you, either social media or professionally?
Yeah, okay. So you can find me on my website, which is just newvistasTherapy.com, and then I just started Instagram like a few weeks ago, and that one's New Vistas Lisa. You can find me there, and you can also call me on my work number, which let me make sure I give you the right number, 435-250-3908. You can text or call that number as well. So
yeah, because it's kind of new. I mean, this particular clinic is new, right? That you just opened.
Yeah, my work number's actually been the same, but some people have my personal, some of work. But
I love
just making sure I get the right one.
Well, that's really awesome. Okay, well, I'm trying to think, because this episode's a little different than what I usually have done. So I'm trying to think like what the best final soundbite would be. I guess it would be, if you, like when you finish with your clients, is there any, I guess the best tip for health, physical, mental, spiritual, what are some words of wisdom, maybe something that would make them feel positive? I know that's kind of a tough thing. What's one of your rules of thumb that helps clients really
feel hope?
Feel hope, feel strong. Any thoughts that way?
Well, just having done this for 14 years of therapy, I see my clients have all access to the wisdom and what they need for healing within them as a therapist. And I'm sure in your position you feel this way too. I get to sit and I get to share these tools. I get to share whether it's breath work or one of these trauma therapies. But at the end of the day, it helps unlock your own intuition and your own connection and your own wisdom. And so trust that you have that in there. If you don't feel like you can access it, there's people that have tools and things they can share, but it's there, and that healing's possible. I have the most incredible healing stories that I've been able to witness and be a part of, and it's such a thing I feel really grateful I get to be a part of. So
that's so
trust
fun.
that process for sure.
That was perfect. I had a hard time spitting that one out.
Yeah, no, I hope that was the answer.
No,
I don't know.
That was perfect. We're incredible, right?
Yeah, we have an amazing capacity for healing.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
So.
Well, I'm so excited that I got to know you a little bit better, and
thanks for having me.
Thank you for these. I love it on these discussions when I get done, and I'm like, Now I have my
I
homework.
know. We have more to explore for
No,
sure.
I love it. Okay. Well, I appreciate Lisa McLauchlin being here, and this is Dr. Traveler, and we are signing out. See you guys.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for listening today. Hey, if you could please go on, like, subscribe, make a comment, go on to all the other social media. Go on to Facebook, Instagram, go on to TikTok, search for Healthology Experts. It really helps us to grow and push this message. And if you gain value from this, then go on and please participate. We try to get to all of the questions or anything that you have, any responses or comments. So go, like, subscribe, do all the stuff that you know helps us. All right, guys, see ya.